Welcoming. Good morning. This episode we will call the Bloomsday Clock. In the last episode we called the Doomsday Clock. Actually, we called it Big Ben's the Doomsday Clock, imagining a bad scenario for the Olympics that brought down the world financial system. The point is, the system was designed to fail. But as opposed today about talking about failure, today we will talk about how the system was designed to succeed. And we began to talk about it in the last episode, so let's just continue that today. Basically, what you really have to realize is that just imagine that, we talked about it before. We are not a great economy right now in the United States, and we barely got away from disaster in 2008. And now we see China starting to weaken and Europe weakening, and so it's not really far to imagine how we all weaken together and the whole thing falls. And if the value of real estate in the United States was to fall again by a big amount again, we talked about how the banks would basically end up owning it. But then again, see, the problem is the banks would own all the houses and the mortgages. And the people wouldn't own them, but the banks with them, they only have a 10% margin of capital. They would immediately, quickly be owned by the federal government, and then the government would own all the debt. So in the long run, what happens is the people that own the banks have an option on the upside. If things go well, they make lots of money. If things go bad, they say, like a mortgage, like your house, they say to the United States government, Citibank, Bank of America, JP Morgan just says, hey, here's the keys to the bank. We fucked up. We lost it all, and now it's yours. And guess what? Yours is mine, yours is theirs. Well, yours is the people, the taxpayers. And so now we're back in the same game. Actually, when you think about who loses in this scenario, the owners of all the capital of all the planet, the rich people have more money to lose than the poor, but it actually affects the poor more because some of the poor die when they can't eat. But let's not get off on the tangents. Okay, so we talked about the Bloomsday Clock, and the Bloomsday Clock is the notion that we create this enterprise and we tell the Fed, listen, you're going to buy all the banks, and you're going to put it in the enterprise, we the people of Earth.biz. And basically, we're going to actually change money. We're going to change the flow of the money and the kind of money, and we're going to move to an electronic money. And we're going to move to eliminating banking as you know it. And instead of mortgages, we'll basically tell the people, you have a house, stay in your house. Your mortgage is canceled, whatever equity you have it. So let's say you might have 20 or 30% equity, or even no equity. You stay in your house for life, and well, if you sell your house, you get to carry your equity along. And in the bank, actually it's not the bank, it's the Federal Reserve, it's a balance sheet issue. So they would just issue money, and that money then puts your house in the Federal Reserve on the balance sheet and says, I own a third of this house and that house and that house. And imagine if the Federal Reserve owned, well, 2/3 of all the houses on the planet. Well, not on the planet, but actually, ultimately, when you do this on a global basis, it does become the planet. But let's think about it. The United States, I now own the chunk of the mortgages. Now, the people that own the mortgages no longer have to pay out the big mortgage payments. See, we're just saying, well, hey, the money's in the bank. The Fed owns a big part of the house. You get a little part of the house, and you don't have a mortgage. Well, what that means is the income you have more of it to spend. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to anticipate an economy growing like an economy has never grown before. And what we see, something went wrong over here. And so what we see is the economy growing, and, well, what do we see? Okay, so imagine if all of a sudden people didn't have to pay all those mortgage payments. Well, that's a big chunk of everybody's paycheck or whatever income they have. And so what do they do with that money? They spend it. They put it back in the economy. they reinvest it for their retirement. And let's talk about the retirement. Because see, when we create this enterprise, we the people of Earth.biz, it becomes sort of like a fund of funds, but sort of an active management thing. We'll have to get a special dispensation from the government to operate in a more active role than a fund does. But just imagine, well, see, what happens with if the whole thing crashes like we talked about before, basically the United States government backs out the pension funds of the governments. But imagine we put all the pension funds and all the funds together and say, listen, you no longer have funds in this and funds in that. We're buying it all. We're buying everything you have. See, here's the plan. Because, see, if I'm going to grow the economy, when I say we, if we're going to grow the economy this great, we don't want to have these profits just go zooming out the window to all the rich people that already own the world. We want to spread those profits. We want to fairly give the people that own the enterprises profits. But if this is it's a sort of a bigger enterprise of us, and the profits of this bigger enterprise should be dedicated to more or all of the people. And so the way we do it very simply, I'm going to buy all of your assets. Warren Buffett, I'll buy your Berkshire Hathaway. I'll get your railroads. I'll buy your trains, planes, and automobiles. I'll buy your Marriotts and your Hiltons and your hotels. Why? Because I know I'll buy your Disneys. I'll buy them all because I know we're going to blow up the value of everything. I'll buy the networks, the phone companies, because we're going to create a bigger broadband network. Now let's think about national policy that might, well, you could look at it as a national policy right now within the context of what you had. But let's think about this. What if we just told, well, now all of a sudden we have the car companies, we have all the companies, they're owned by we the people of Earth.biz. We told the business leaders, listen, consolidate, make savings, make it more profitable. The profits will go back to the people. Yes, we will lose jobs, but in the long run, as we change the mechanics of this, our incomes go up, and our style of living goes up because we can do the numbers better. And so imagine this. So now all of a sudden, the economy starts booming. And well, not only the construction that can happen, but imagine where the trains are going to want to go, and the trucks. Okay, so here's an energy policy. Let's use all of the gas deposits that are going for almost nothing in the United States and build an infrastructure to promote the use of gas with all our shale oil and the gas, and let's use all of our domestic resources to the extent we can, and gas is cleaner than petroleum. But as we create demand across the world, we actually create an increasing demand for the petroleum. That's why we want to ultimately extend this notion and say to Saudi Arabia, listen, the American enterprise, you get a cut of it, we're going to share a cut of you. Throw in all your oil. Same thing to Russia, throw your oil in, your natural resources. The Chinese, throw your enterprises in. We'll mix and match these enterprises and create enterprises on a global scale. With competition where our champions will compete with themselves and, well, will drive the advancement of our knowledge and will change the economics of our economics. But the biggest thing is, so imagine that. Okay, so now here's the thing. What happens when we put all this stuff in to one single enterprise? Your GEs, you could just go on the list, your Honeywells, your FedExes, your UPSs, your Amazons, your Apples, your Googles, you name it, your IBMs, they're all in one enterprise. Well, guess what? All that stock is owned by we the people of Earth.biz. You either own preferred stock or common stock. When you trade out your stock in IBM or whoever, you get stock in the enterprise. And then the enterprise makes the right decisions on what to do with the pieces. And, well, think of those companies that you know are subsidiaries of a larger enterprise. And so, well, that gets very much different than what we know today. Now, in order to do this, we actually need to buy out the nations. Now, when the enterprise of we the people of Earth.biz buys out the nations, That enterprise then must buy out the obligations of nations. What are those obligations? We will establish obligations beyond profit. We will establish minimum standards of living that we will deliver. But remember, I talked about the notion of virtual money. Well, see, if we change our system to one of virtual money, think about if we, the people of enterprise, replaced all the things that the United States does. I'm sorry, we, the people of Earth.biz, or, well, .biz, and, it's actually, let's look at it from an American perspective for right now, but it really is a global perspective. The only way it really works is at a global scale. The only way it really works is if we start to move towards justice and peace on earth and eliminate war, because war is a free radical to take the whole thing down. And so the thing is this: if all of a sudden we went to electronic money, we wouldn't need all of these like departments to determine in housing and human welfare and social services to determine the people are doing right. We wouldn't have to issue just food stamps. We could have electronically traceable. We could know where the money. Now it could be on a card in a very simplistic standpoint, or even your cell phone. Since you have, there's different ways you could do it. You could even put a chip in a person, and all of a sudden that goes to his virtual account. The point is this: that person could spend money. That money would trace. And, well, let's say we wanted to keep the person from spending all of his money on booze. Well, his money might have a booze limit, and it's electronically traceable, and, well, it forces you to buy an amount of food, etc., 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 and all of a sudden we can take out the middlemen in trying to provide services and trying to make people do the right thing. But the better thing to do is to drive them low-cost housing, reasonable health care, and, well, you know what we have to realize is the future will be a jobless world in our world. And see, as we know it, as we've developed, there's a secular trend moving jobs on the low-wage scale off to places like China, and at the high end, starting to automate things. And, well, so we talked about what happens when we, the people of Earth.biz, has all the stock, has all the bonds. They go away. We don't need the financial capital world. Massive parts of these office buildings that do nothing but investments and trades and lawyers and suing and thising and thating. We won't need them anymore. They'll just be like dead wood in our way. And so, what happens? Well, then you get to say, whoa, what happens to all these office buildings? And our banks probably have the mortgages, but no problem, because when the people that own the buildings, they fall, we have to repurpose them. How do you repurpose all the empty office buildings in New York City? Very, very simple. You turn them into penthouses. You turn them into hotels. See, we have to look forward to a world where many things that we think of today, the things like financial services, which have grown in the United States over the last couple of decades, while we were hollowing out our manufacturing sector, is only but an illusion that we must eliminate, an illusion that must die in order for us to live. And so, imagine a world that's growing at a 9%, and I'm talking about the United States, it's growing at 9% rate. We're building again, but we're building with a promise to the people at the bottom and a promise to the people at the top. And who's running this place? We're making sure that the smartest people at the top is when we buy them, we're not going to buy them and put in the stupid. We're going to buy them out and put them back in charge to the extent they want to. Those that are bought out want to retire, fine. But let's bring back the greats. Let's bring back Jack Wolf. Oh, what the heck is his name? They called him, Jack the Knife. Jack, you know Jack who you are. Let's bring back Jack. And let's bring back Steve Jobs. I'm sorry, Jack Welch. And so let's bring back them all. Let's let them run a large enterprise. An enterprise of all of the people on Earth. And let's grow infinitely. From infinite minds comes infinite money.